and get it to move. And there we go. I have not gotten to the rear axle carrier, which is a major part of this ATV. It didn't quite fit in snug on the one I already did, and I just had to use the hammer a little bit, and I kind of don't want to beat on it too much, and this one ain't going in either. So now that we have the bearings in, we're going to just set our new rotor on here, and these rotor bolts do need blue Loctite, and then we're going to just reinstall our last piece right here into the. Okay, y'all, I'm back again, and today I'm just really tired. I didn't get anything done this weekend. I took apart another Shark vacuum cleaner. I thought I was going to come out here and be, hey man, I could be energetic, but I'm wore out. That Shark vacuum took me 8 hours to shoot the video, and I haven't even edited yet. Pretty much, I'm gonna be done with vacuum. So it's about 10 o'clock at night. I just came out here and I just rebuilt one of the front hubs, and we're gonna change out the front bearings here. And I installed new brakes, so I've got one left to do, and I'll walk you through the whole process there. The one thing I do want to say, I'll throw up some pictures here. I didn't realize that there's actually a little cone piece that goes onto the shaft here, and then you have two separate bearings. You have a large bearing and you have a small bearing, and both the bearings are pressed into the housing, and for some reason the kit that I bought, the front bearing isn't sealed, so I don't know what's going on with that. So when I installed the bearing, I put the closed side toward the inside, because the rubber cap, as you'll see as we disassemble this, I'll be able to pop that rubber cap off if this thing needs serviced and re-grease it. I just cake grease inside of it. So once you get the capsule nut on the unit itself and press onto the front of the rubber housing, you're probably more than likely going to have a watertight seal. However, I just don't know why the bearing is the correct size. I just don't understand why they would have left that open and not sent a sealed bearing. So this is really easy to do. There's two ways of doing this. You can use a bearing kit, a bearing install kit, and I'll put the link below if you need to buy one of these. You never know when you're going to use these. Or you can use, once you pop the old bearings out, you could use those bearings. And actually, we're going to install this by hand. I'm not going to use the shop press or the arbor press to do this. That way, if you need this done or are going to attempt to do this, you can do this. Now, I will tell you, I wanted to do the Boss bearing tapered bearing upgrade kit, but I ordered the kit and then they just gave me my money back and said, well, we don't manufacture that kit. So I waited a couple weeks and they reposted it. I emailed them and they said, no, we only have the rear available, but they have the front. So I prefer tapered bearings. The bearings that I usually replace on street bikes, I go all tapered. I don't mess around with the old bearings. Tapered bearings are just better bearings. And yeah, but we're going to reinstall these old bearings. So if you want to do this, just stay tuned, and I'm going to walk you completely through it. Okay, so first off, in this kit, this is your small bearing that they sent me that's open. This is the side that's going to go out here so I can grease it. If I put it on the inside here and the outside is sealed, if I grease this, I'll show you with this cone piece inside of here, there may be a little bit of a gap, and if the grease starts to run low, it's just going to go to the inside of the hub. So I might be wrong. Drop a comment. This might go toward the inside, but I'm going to press it to the outside. And then this is our complete sealed bearing here that goes in the back. So as of right now, if you have removed your whole hub here, you cannot tell. These bearings are froze. They do not move. I did paint this, but they did not move. That's why I decided to replace it. But there's actually, the cone is inside of there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of tap on this. Or actually, I'm going to remove this rubber seal first. And this one is actually metal. Yeah, the other one's metal too. And see, that's a sealed bearing as well. And these are marked China, which if they're marked China, it's super hard for me to believe that these are the factory Chinese bearings, but they might be. But these are really in there. And when you go to install these will install a lot easier than they're being removed, because, and that one's sealed too, because you're going to be using the castle nut and pressing the whole assembly onto the ATV. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to try to get on the edge, on the inside of the housing. You're going to see a little bit of lip, and in the middle is going to be that tapered cone, and I'm going to try to go on the inside and hit the bearing housing. And try to knock that front bearing out first. Once the small one is out, it may be easier to hit the big one. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know you just need to get a little bit of a gap on this. And get it to move. Once it moves just a little bit, it's going to be hard to see here. On the inside, you can see that the cone has moved. Once I gave it a little tap, what kept it in place, there's the cone. What kept it in place was the force of the castle nut. So now that the cone has moved, I can go through here and hit the inner housing of the front bearing, which would be essentially like hitting the inner ring of this bearing. And it is about 100 degrees outside, so I have not really been out here. I tried to finish. I finally got my house remodeled, if you haven't known, and there we go. And I had to basically build custom made furniture for my house, and that all finally got done. I got one more workbench to build. That's going to go 4 foot alongside of the refrigerator in stainless steel. But anyway, so as you can see, your large side is going to go toward your bigger bearing here, and your small side will go there. And once I tapped this one time, this center cone got loose. When we reinstall the bearings, this does not need to be tight. Once you press that castle nut on, it will be tight. When you reinstall these bearings, this piece will be loose. So we'll just set this aside. It's the big bearing that wasn't moving. Not the small one. The small one was still good. So we'll go ahead now and remove this bearing. So we're going to max it. What we've done now is I pressed it all the way against the wood, and we're flush, so I can't go anymore. So we're going to go from the side and kind of hold it up, and then I'll just knock it out here. I've almost got it. I guess I could put it in the vise. But everybody that may be watching my videos don't have a vise. So there we go. There's our second bearing. Boy, I mangled that one. And look at that. That sucker's froze. It ain't moving at all. Why this front one would freeze and not the back one, I really don't know. So Chinese bearings are good to an extent, but you know, you kind of get what you pay for. So what I'm going to do now is I have a little bit of grease and I've got a little bit of cleaner here. I'm just going to spray this down and wipe it out. Okay, now that we have everything wiped out, I'm going to actually install this large bearing first. And what you're going to do is you're going to go right over this lip. The bearing is going to press right underneath of this lip. So you don't know if you have it all the way seated until you could see this groove on the inside. With installing the big bearing first, you will be able to look on the inside here and see if it's pretty much seated. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of center our bearing here, and you could do this a couple different ways. My bearing installers have been used so much that they are pretty much damaged. The only thing is they're aluminum and these are steel. So you can kind of do this two ways. You actually use your older bearing and beat it in, or if you have a bearing install kit, you can use it and size up. For this one here, if you don't have a bearing install kit, link below, purchases always help. We'll go ahead and I'll try to install this real quick with the old bearing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to beat around the circle here and try to get this in. I'm going to give it one tap in the middle first to start it. It didn't quite go in straight, so I'm going to go up here to the right, and then I'm going to go just around the bearing, and I've got it pretty straight now. So now I'm going to come back, get the bearing where it needs to be, and I'm going to hit it in the middle, and we've pretty much got it seated into the unit. And now I'm just going to go around. Don't be afraid to hit this kind of hard. You just need to make sure that your bearing is on the outside of the new bearing. We're getting pretty close to seating into the groove. We can't quite see the groove or catch it with the screwdriver yet, so we will continue here. I believe we have it seated. We should be good to go there. If we flip it over to the other side, you can see that it is seated where it needs to be. So we are now going to reinstall our cone into the housing, and it will be loose. Don't think that you're going to mess it up if it's loose. And like I said, drop a comment if I am not installing this right. We're actually going to put some grease on this. One of the biggest things that you can do to extend the life of these bearings is use a good grease. I have not gotten to the rear axle carrier, which is a major part of this ATV. I have got over probably 10 messages on people that have serviced that rear carrier, and the problem with that rear carrier is it's not being made anymore. And if the rear carrier is worn out or is damaged, there's really not a lot that you can do to service that. However, from what I'm understanding and what I'm reading from what people are doing is they're leaving the whole carrier on the ATV when they remove the rear carrier, and they're taking off the rubber boot. And when they take off the rubber boot, they're just using the grease that comes in the kits, and they're greasing the outside of the carrier, but they're not injecting grease all the way into the inside of the carrier. So if you only grease the outside of the carrier and your grease is wore out, gunky, or damaged, you won't see it. And then they're starting to get a clicking noise and other issues that I think can be resolved if they would use a high quality grease and remove the carrier instead of leaving the carrier in the four-wheeler to do it as fast and as cheap as possible. So we don't cut a lot of corners around here. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we've got a little more grease than I want on there, but we're going to go ahead and install this top bearing. And we're going to use our old bearing to get it started. And you want to try to get it straight. Once it gets straight, you should be able just to beat it in. Okay, we've got this front one finally seated up, and as you can see my finger, the inner cone is moving a little bit, which is fine. So if you have it moving, you're just fine. And we are pretty much seated in. I'm going to go around and give this a few more whacks. And we should be good to go here. The other thing that I'm going to do is we are going to go ahead and fill this top part full of grease. I probably should be using gloves. And then with our cap here, I'm going to actually fill the cap with grease as well. Hopefully I'll be done with the grease for a while. Okay, now when you go to install this top one, I actually was able to push, yeah, here we go. I was able to push the top one in with my fingers, and it should be level with the front of the carrier as it is. If you do not have that bearing all the way installed, it will not be level. So just kind of keep an eye on it, make sure it gets installed properly. Dude, been having problems in the community. I don't know if you've heard that. Okay, and then we're just going to install our back one. And I had a little issue with installing the rear one. It didn't quite fit in snug on the one I already did, and I just had to use the hammer a little bit. And I kind of don't want to beat on it too much, and this one ain't going in either. So I'm not real sure what I want to do here. And this could be caused by the cheaper kit that I purchased. That this kit isn't super high quality. So we've got both of them seated in. And now we will install our rear brake. So now that we have the bearings in, we're going to just set our new rotor on here. And then we're going to put our new rotor bolts on. And these rotor bolts do need blue Loctite installed on the bolts upon installation. If you've never installed rotor bolts, what you're going to want to do is get one of them. We're not going to torque on them, but we're going to get it to where it just sits kind of flush on the disc. And then we're going to go cross pattern, just like you're changing the tire on a car. And we're going to go cross. And we're going to come over here to this side. This way the rotor gets pressed down evenly. Then I'm just going to come back with my electric impact. And put them puppies on. Now don't forget, you also have your outer ring that is going to sit in the seal. And then on the front side as well, there will be a ring here. When I was doing this, I left the wheel nuts on so I didn't damage the threads from beating on the unit. And I also had painted the dust covers, so we'll go ahead and reinstall those as well. And then we're going to just reinstall our last piece right here into the unit, which should be good. So that's pretty much it. We're going to go ahead and reinstall these on the front end once I go to tighten all the bolts. So this is really the last step here before I go into the tightening process on the complete front. and rear A arms. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching. Check the playlist out. Don't forget to leave a comment. That helps with the algorithm. I come to find out. Thumbs up if this helps you. And there's a new thing called a super chat donation. If this really helped you out and kept you out of the shop, maybe give that a hit and throw me a couple bones. So I'm out of here.